Hello, in this engineering mechanics class I will discuss force and system forces acting on an object or body. So let's first discuss what is force. So to understand the force, let's assume a body of mass m in its position of body is A, and if you want to move this body from here to a new position B, then an action is required. So this action, which is essential for the movement of this object or for this body from initial position A to initial position, final position B, is called the force. This action is force. So if the body gain an acceleration of amount A due to this the force or due to this action, then we can define this action or the force acting on the body F m times A, or we can write dv by dt. So this is the rate of the change of the moment velocity under the action or due to this acting force F. So if you know the net acceleration of the body due to any action, then we can estimate how much force is acting on this object by using a simple mathematical formulation. Okay, so the concept of the force is not new. That's why I'm not discussing in detail. So now let's move to a new the topic or new the definitions. So line of action. So to understand the line of action of a force, we consider a body of mass m, and if I assume F1 acts on this body, F2 acts at this point a body, then if I extend the line of the force in the opposite direction, or if I extend this force in this direction, okay, so this is nothing but line of action. Now this is again the line of the action. Okay, so means if we extend the direction of the force in opposite direction, so this is called the line of action of a given force. Now let's discuss system of the forces. So to understand the system of the forces, to understand the concept of the system of forces, let's assume a body F1 acts on body, F2 acts at this point, F3 acts on body, F4 is also acting on body. So now what we observe, no single force, acting on body, F1, F2, F3 and F4. So group of forces is acting on body. So this group of the forces we call the system forces. Forces is nothing but the system of forces. Okay, so if we assume that this body is a system and there is not a single but the group of the forces are acting on this system, that's why we call the system of the forces, means the group of the forces acting on this body, and these forces will decide the motion of this object in a given plane or in a space. So now we can again define the system forces, different kind of system of forces. So the system of forces we can divide in two groups. One is coplanar system of forces and second one is non-coplanar system of forces. Okay, so I will discuss the coplanar system of forces and then later I will discuss the non-coplanar system of forces acting on a body or the massive object. So let's discuss first coplanar system of forces. So to understand the coplanar system of forces, let's again assume a system or a body having some finite mass and the group of forces are acting on this object. So F1 is acting at this point, F2 acts at this point, F3 at this point here, and this body is a 2D object. So this is 2D object, means the motion of this object will be restricted in this xy plane under the action of these the forces. So now the body is a 2D object. So F1, F2 and F3, all forces are acting in a 2D plane, means XY plane. So if I extend the line of action of these forces, so the line of action of this force is here, the line of action of this force is here. So the line of action of these forces lines of action of all forces lie in a XY plane, means 2D plane. So the group of such forces is called coplanar system of forces. Okay, so if we have an object or the body, and the motion of the body is restricted in a 2 dimension, or the motion of the body is in a given plane, in the 2D plane, then the forces which are responsible for the motion of this object in a given planes fall in coplanar system of the forces. It means all these forces will lie in a single 2D plane, or in this case all these forces will lie in XY plane. Okay, so if this type of the situations is arising for any mechanical object, then we can define the group of the forces as a coplanar system of the forces for that particular system. So now, depending on the line of action of these forces, we can again divide the coplanar, the system of forces, into the different category. So now coplanar, the system of forces, we can again divide into different groups. So collinear coplanar system of the forces. Second is parallel coplanar system of the forces. Third one is concurrent coplanar system of the forces, and non-concurrent coplanar system of the forces. So now I will discuss one by one with the suitable examples. So let's first discuss collinear coplanar system of the forces. So to understand the concept of coplanar system of the forces, let's assume an object in a given plane. Let's say this is the XY plane, and object can be 2D or the 3D, but its motion will be restricted in a 2D plane. Okay, and we define, let's say, one force is acting on in this direction and another force is acting in this direction. Okay, so now we can say that F1 and F2 are acting, two forces are acting on object, acting in a xy plane. Okay, so this is the 2D plane. The forces are coplanar because both forces lie in a given xy plane. So now if I draw the line of action of both forces, so the line of action of the F1, if I draw the line of action of the force here, the line of action of the force F1 F2, it means, so this force F1 and this is the line of action, and then force F2 and this line of action here. So when the line of action of these forces are along a same line, it means the line of action of the force and line of action of force both are on a same line, means then the lines of action of F1 and F2 same line. So if we have the group of the forces acting on body, all forces lie in a single plane, and if the line of action of the forces act on the systems lie on a same line, or we can say all the line of actions are along a same line, we call such type of the coplanar forces as a coplanar system of forces. So now we can discuss the second parallel. So to understand the parallel coplanar system of the forces, let's again assume a body and F1 acts at this point, F2 is acting here, F3 is acting here, so F1, F2 and F3, all forces acting in xy plane, means all these forces are coplanar forces. Now if we draw the line of action of these forces, so line of action of this force, line of action of this force, line of action of this force, so we observe that the line of action of these forces are parallel to each other. It means, so we can define here, so this is the F1, this is the F3 in this plane, and this is the F2, this is the line of action of the forces. So all these the forces, or we can say the line of action of these forces, are parallel. Okay, it means these forces are coplanar in nature. And now if we extend the line of the action of these forces and then look at the line of action of the forces, all the line of action of forces are parallel to each other, means F2 is parallel to F1, F1 is parallel to F3, F3 is parallel to F2, and all these forces lie in this 2D, the plane, means xy plane. That's why this type of the forces, or we call the group of the forces, as a parallel coplanar system of the forces. Now let's discuss third one, concurrent coplanar system of the forces. So to understand what is the concurrent the forces, so again I consider the motion of the object in xy plane, and this is the object. The forces are acting in xy plane on this object. So F1, let's say the F1 is acting here, F2 is acting here, F3 is acting here. And now if I extend the line of action of all these forces, so the line of action of this one here, line of action of this force is here also, line of action of this force is here. So if we look at the line of action of these forces, it means the line of action of the F1 and line of action of F2 and line of action of F3 meet at this point C. It means they intersect at a common point C. So this type of the forces falls in a concurrent coplanar system of the forces. So we can summarize here. So F1, F2 and F3 all lie in xy plane, means all are the coplanar forces, and the line of the action of all these forces, lines of action of these forces meet at a common point. C. Okay, so this, the group of the forces, is concurrent coplanar system of the forces. So if the motion of the object in a given plane under the action of the different kind of forces, and if the line of the action of the forces meets at a certain point, at a common point, okay, and then this type of the group of the forces we call concurrent coplanar system of the forces. Now discuss, let's say, the fourth one, non-concurrent coplanar system of the forces. So to understand the concept of the non-concurrent coplanar system of the forces, let's again assume the motion of an object in a 2D plane under the action of the different kind of forces. So let's say F1 is acting this direction, F2 is acting here, F3 is acting, let's say, in this direction, F4 is here. Okay, so all forces are acting in a xy plane, means 2D plane. So all these forces are the coplanar in nature. Now if we draw the line of action of these forces, so the line of action of this force is this one, line of action of this force is here, line of the action of this force is this one, line of action of this force is here. So now you can see here, you will find the points of the intersections for the different forces. So it means F1, F2, F3 and F4 all are the coplanar forces, but the line of action of these forces do not meet a common point. So lines of action of all these forces do not meet at a common point. So now in this case, the group of the forces we call as non-concurrent coplanar system of the forces. So if the motion of an object is restricted in a given plane under the action of the different kind of the forces, and if we draw the line of action of the forces, line of action of the acting forces, then if you notice that the line intersection of the line of action of forces is not a common point, but we have the different points, then this type of the group of the forces we call as non-concurrent coplanar system of the forces. So I hope you got the concept of the collinear, planar, concurrent and non-concurrent coplanar, the system of the forces. Now let's move to the second category of the system of the forces, which is non-coplanar the system of forces. So to understand the concept of non-coplanar system of the forces, first let's assume a body in space. Okay, so this is any body of mass m, or we can say this is the system, and the forces acting on this object or the body is F1, so now the motion of this object is not restricted in a given plane, but now the motion of the object can be in a different planes. Means at a given time we need to define the motion of particles by considering the motion, by considering the components in the different plane. Okay, it means let's say if the F1, F2 and F3 all acting forces on the object do not lie in a single plane. So let's assume that the force F1 is in xy plane, force F2 in yz plane, and force F3 acting on the body is in xz plane. So we have the group of the forces. Means the three forces are acting on the object. All these forces are responsible for the motion of this object in the space. So if F1 lies in xy plane, F2 lies in yz plane, and F3 lies in xz plane, then we define this group of the forces as non-coplanar system of forces. It means the forces acting on object do not lie in a single plane. So now, depending on the line of action of the forces which are acting in the different planes, we can again divide the non-coplanar system forces into some other subcategory. So non-coplanar system of the forces, we can define the system of forces as a parallel, concurrent, now I will discuss each of the force in detail with suitable example. Okay, so let's discuss one by one. The first is parallel. So now discuss the parallel non-planar system of the forces. So to understand the concept of the parallel non-coplanar system of the forces, let's assume an object in a space, and we consider a body of mass m. Okay, so this is your body, and we assume, let's say, okay, so let's say this is nothing but the y direction. Okay, this is your x direction, or this is your z direction, and F1 is acting on this plane, and let's say one force is acting here, F3 is here. So now if we look at here, so now F1, F2 and F3 is group of the forces and F1 is acting in xy plane, F2 also acting in xy plane, so this is Z, and F3 in YZ plane. Okay, so three forces F1, F2, F3, but two forces are lying in a single plane, xy plane, but the third one force is acting in the YZ plane. It means the forces are not acting in a single plane, but if you draw the line of action of these forces, so the line of action of these forces means the F1, F3 and F2. Okay, so forces are coplanar, non-coplanar, but and if we draw the line of action of these forces, even the forces are not lying in a single plane, but the line of action of the forces are parallel to each other. Okay, so the line of action of the forces are parallel to each other. That's why we call the system of forces as parallel non-planar, the system of the forces. So lines of action of forces are parallel to each other. Okay, so this is the example of the parallel non-coplanar, the system of the forces. Means the forces will lie in different planes, but the line of action forces will be parallel to each other. Now consider the second category, concurrent. So to understand again concurrent coplanar system of forces, we consider body in space, okay, so this is object of mass m. Now let's assume the one force, okay, acting parallel perpendicular to this plane, means this plane, front plane, and another force is acting perpendicular to this plane. So if so now F1 and F2 non-coplanar, because the F1 is acting in YZ plane, sorry, ZX plane, XZ plane, and F2 is acting in the YZ plane. So both forces are acting in different plane, but if we draw the line of action of these forces, so line of action of this force and line of action of forces meet at a point C in space. So lines of action of forces meet at a common point. So the group of such forces is called concurrent non-coplanar system of the forces. So if the various forces are acting on a body in the space, and then if the forces are in non-coplanar nature, then if we draw the line of action of all the acting forces on the body, and if we find that the line of actions of acting forces meet at a common point in the space, then the common point in the space meet at common point in this space, then we call these group of the forces as a concurrent non-coplanar system of forces. So now let's discuss the last category. So third one is non-concurrent non-coplanar system of the forces. So to understand the nature of the forces, let's consider object in space. Again, we define an object in this space. Okay, so object mass m. So now if you assume, let's say the one force is acting in this plane, force is acting in this plane, another force acting in this plane. Okay, so now what we observe? We observe that the group of forces are acting on this object. Okay, so F1, F2 and F3 acting on object in space. Now, so F1 lies in XZ plane, F2 XY plane, F3 also in XY plane. Okay, so F1 is acting in xz plane, F2 is acting in this plane, F3 is also acting in this plane. So the group of forces are not acting in a single plane, they are acting in different plane. It means the forces are non-coplanar in nature. Now if we draw the line of action of these forces, so the line of the action of the forces of F3 is here, line of the action of the forces of F2 is here, line of the forces of F1 is here. Okay, it means one intersection of the line of forces is here, but this force does not has any intersection, or we can say if we extrapolate this one, then maybe here. So it means the forces which are acting on body lies in different plane, but if we draw the line of action of these forces in this space, then there is no common meeting point, there is no common midpoint of the line of action of these forces. Okay, so it means, so the lines of action of forces do not meet at a common point. So this is an example of non-concurrent, non-coplanar system of the forces. So in summary, I can say that if we have an object, the motion of the object is restricted in a space, not in a 2D plane. And if we look at the nature of the forces, and forces acting on the body forces lie in different planes. Then if we draw the line of action of these forces and there is a no common point of the interactions of these forces in space, so such group of the forces falls in a non-concurrent, non-coplanar system of forces. Okay, so I hope I tried my best to explain the force and the system forces acting on an object in 2D as well as in 3D space. Thank you. I will come with a new topic in next class.